It's my money, my rules. Mom slammed her designer purse onto my kitchen counter, scattering my wedding plans everywhere. That backyard ceremony is embarrassing. I've already booked the grand pavilion. 6 days before my wedding, the intimate garden ceremony Brian and I had saved for over a year, and my mother had just detonated everything with a single phone call. The grand pavilion is already booked, Mom continued, tapping through her phone with manicured nails. I've added the Richardsons, the Coopers, and your father's entire law firm. She turned her screen toward me, revealing a guest list that had doubled overnight with names I barely recognized. The orchid arrangements will be delivered tomorrow for your approval, though frankly, they don't need it. The wedding planner glanced between us, clutching her portfolio like a shield. Perhaps I should step outside while you discuss. No, I said, my voice unexpectedly steady despite the hurricane in my chest. This is still my wedding. Sweetie, without my check, there is no wedding. I've already canceled your charming backyard vendors. She waved dismissively at the scattered plans. Brian understands. He agrees the upgrade is for the best. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Brian knows about this? Of course. I showed him the new venue yesterday. He was quite impressed. She squeezed my hand, her diamond ring digging into my skin. Trust me, Samantha. You'll thank me when you see the photos. As if orchestrated, the doorbell rang. A delivery man swept in with sample arrangements, towering cascades of orchids and roses, nothing like the wild flowers I'd chosen. The wedding planner's eyes widened at the opulence, while something inside me cracked like thin ice on a winter pond. I stared at the orchids, feeling my chest tighten with each breath. These weren't just flowers, they were another link in the chain of choices made for me, not by me. Years of suggestions that were actually commands, of helpful advice that erased my preferences. Every dress, every haircut, every boyfriend Mom had deemed suitable or not. Without thinking, I grabbed the nearest arrangement and hurled it against the wall. White petals and water exploded across my kitchen like shrapnel. The planner gasped. The delivery man backed toward the door. Mom's smile vanished, replaced by shock I'd never seen on her carefully controlled face. Get out, I whispered, hands trembling but voice deadly calm. All of you. Out. Now. The apartment emptied in seconds. Only Mom remained, her expression shifting from surprise to the cold anger I'd feared my entire life. I yanked open my desk drawer and pulled out the original wedding contract, slapping it on the counter between us. I made these plans with Brian. Our plans. Our money. Our wedding. Your money? The teacher's salary that barely covers this apartment? Don't be ridiculous. She reached for her phone. I'm calling your father. You're clearly overwhelmed. I snatched the phone from her hand and held it behind my back. For the first time in 28 years, I saw genuine surprise on my mother's face. What's gotten into you? She demanded. My wedding, I answered, discovering a new voice, one I barely recognized as my own. And you've got 24 hours to cancel everything you changed, or I will. Mom's face flushed crimson. You wouldn't dare. I slid my engagement ring off and set it on the counter between us. The 3-carat diamond she'd pressured Brian into buying because it reflects on the family winked coldly under the kitchen lights. Try me. The door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the family photos on my wall, pictures of perfect, coordinated outfits and frozen smiles spanning decades. I slumped against the refrigerator, surrounded by scattered flowers and the wreckage of my plans, wondering if I'd just destroyed my wedding, my relationship, and my family in one spectacular meltdown. My phone buzzed with Brian's face on the screen. I stared at it, heart pounding against my ribs, and wondered what version of the story he'd already heard. Mom's Mercedes was already in Brian's driveway when I arrived. I sat in my car, watching them through the living room window, Mom's animated gestures, Brian's concerned nods, Dad's stoic presence in the corner armchair. The family tribunal assembled to bring me back in line. I gripped a folder containing the original wedding contracts. Proof that I wasn't crazy or overwhelmed, as Mom had undoubtedly told them. The contracts were signed and paid with the money Brian and I had saved, not extravagant, but ours. The deposit receipts were highlighted in yellow. My phone had exploded with messages. Mom, your behavior was inexcusable. Come apologize. Dad, let's discuss this rationally. My sister, WTF did you do? Mom's on the warpath. And Brian, my fiancé, my partner, your mom's really upset. We should talk about the changes. They're actually pretty nice. No, are you okay? No, what happened? Just concerned for my mother's feelings. The front door opened. Brian stood framed in the doorway, his expression a mixture of confusion and disappointment. Sam, are you coming in? I clutched the folder tighter and stepped out of the car. The walk to his door felt like crossing a battlefield. Inside, Mom sat on the couch like a queen holding court. Dad nodded stiffly from his chair. Brian guided me to sit beside Mom, but I remained standing. Samantha, Mom began, voice honey-sweet for the audience. I know wedding planning is stressful, but you changed everything, I interrupted, forcing my voice to stay level. The venue, the flowers, the guest list, the catering, all without asking me. Mom waved dismissively. I made improvements. The backyard ceremony you planned was charming, but limited. It was what we wanted, I said, turning to Brian. Wasn't it? Brian shifted uncomfortably. Your mom showed me the new venue. It's actually really impressive, babe. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors. And who's paying for it? I asked. I am, Mom announced proudly. My gift to you both. No need to thank me. I opened the folder and spread the contracts across the coffee table. We already paid deposits. Non-refundable deposits. Dad leaned forward, frowning at the papers. How much? $5,000, I said. Our money, not yours. Mom scoffed. A small price for upgrading from a backyard barbecue to a proper wedding. A small price. My voice rose despite my efforts. That's 2 months of my salary. Which is why you need our help, Mom replied smoothly. Sweetheart, this is what parents do. We give our children the best. Brian picked up one of the contracts. Maybe we could compromise? Keep some of our original plans, but incorporate your mom's upgrades. I stared at him, the betrayal settling cold in my stomach. You knew. She told you she was changing everything, and you didn't tell me. He had the decency to look ashamed. I thought you'd be happy. It's the Grand Pavilion, Sam. Most brides would kill for that venue. I'm not most brides, I said quietly, the realization dawning with perfect clarity. And you've both known that since we started planning. I gathered the contracts back into the folder. I'm going to fix this. Mom's smile returned, triumphant. Good. I'll call the wedding planner and... No, I cut her off. I'm going to call everyone tomorrow and cancel your changes. We're having the wedding we planned. The room went silent. Dad cleared his throat. Samantha, be reasonable. Your mother has already paid substantial deposits. Not my problem, I replied, surprising myself with how little I cared about Mom's lost money. Mom stood, her composure slipping. If you cancel my arrangements, I'll cancel my check. All of it. See how far your teacher's salary gets you then. It was the threat she'd used since college, money as a leash tugged whenever I strayed too far from her vision. She expected me to fold, as I always had. Brian touched my arm. Sam, come on. It's just one day. Is it worth all this drama? I looked between them, Mom's expectant face, Dad's uncomfortable grimace, Brian's pleading eyes, and felt something shift inside me. A lock breaking. It's not about the wedding anymore, I said softly. It's about every decision I've ever made that wasn't really mine. I pulled my engagement ring from my pocket and placed it on the table. I need time to think. Brian's face paled. You're calling off the wedding? Over party decorations? I'm postponing it until I figure out whose wedding it actually is. I turned to my mother. And whose life I'm living. As I walked out, Mom called after me. You're making a scene over nothing. This is what you always do. Create drama for attention. I closed the door behind me, her words still hanging in the air. In my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, waiting for the panic to set in. The fear, the regret. Instead, I felt something unexpected, relief. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I silenced it after the 15th call and drove to the only place I could think of, my sister Kate's apartment. She opened the door in sweatpants, her expression shifting from irritation to concern when she saw my face. "Holy shit," she said, pulling me inside. "You actually did it." I collapsed on her couch. Did what? Stood up to Hurricane Helen. She handed me a glass of wine. Mom's called everyone. And I mean everyone. Grandma. Aunt Susan. My roommate, somehow. I groaned. What's she saying? That you're having a nervous breakdown. That Brian's devastated. That she's worried about your mental health. Kate settled beside me. The usual tactics. My phone lit up again, Brian's 5th call in an hour. Aren't you going to answer him? Kate asked. I shook my head. Not until I figure out whose side he's on. She snorted. That's easy. He's on whatever side keeps the peace. She studied me over her wine glass. You know, if you go through with the original wedding, Mom will make everyone miserable. She'll wear black and tell everyone she's in mourning for your future. I know. And if you go with her version, you'll hate every minute of it. I know that too. Kate refilled our glasses. So, what's in that folder you're clutching like a life preserver? I spread the contracts across her coffee table. Venue confirmation for the lakeside garden I'd fallen in love with. Catering deposit for the family-owned restaurant that had created a custom menu within our budget. The simple flower arrangements. The small guest list. It's so, Kate said, examining the plans. Thoughtful. Intentional. No wonder Mom hates it. A new text buzzed through. Brian again. Your parents are really upset. Can we please talk? This isn't how we solve problems. He doesn't get it, I murmured. Kate sighed. Few men do. They think it's just about centerpieces and seating charts. It's about the next 40 years, I said. If I can't stand up for my wedding, how will I ever stand up for my marriage? My children? My career? I thought of all the times Mom had overwhelmed my choices with her better ones. The college major she'd suggested when mine was impractical. The apartment she'd found when mine was in a questionable area. The men she approved of versus the ones who weren't suitable. Brian had been suitable. Lawyer. Good family. Respectable income. He'd fit neatly into Mom's vision of my life, which was why we'd gotten this far. I should have seen it sooner, I said. Kate squeezed my hand. Most people never see it at all. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. I opened it, then froze. This is Elizabeth, your wedding planner. Your mother has just fired me, but I want you to know I have all your original vendors on hold. They can still accommodate your date. Call me if you want to proceed with your wedding. I showed Kate the message. Damn, she whispered. The universe is giving you a sign. I stared at the text, realizing I had a choice to make. Not just about table linens and flower arrangements, but about the rest of my life. I need to talk to Brian, I said. Alone. Not with my parents playing puppet master. Kate nodded. Use my place. I'll make myself scarce. I texted Brian. Meet me at Kate's. Just you. We need to talk. His reply came instantly. On my way. While we waited, I asked Kate, did you ever feel like this about your wedding? She laughed bitterly. Why do you think I eloped? Mom didn't speak to me for 3 months, but it was worth every silent treatment and passive-aggressive holiday. The doorbell rang. Kate squeezed my shoulder before slipping into her bedroom. Remember, it's your life, not hers. Brian stood in the doorway, his expression a mixture of confusion and frustration. What's going on, Sam? Your mom is beside herself. Come in, I said, stepping aside. And for once, let's talk about us, not my mother. He entered cautiously, as if the apartment might be booby-trapped. I pointed to the contracts on the coffee table. That's our wedding, I said. The one we planned together. The one we could afford on our own. He sighed. I know, but your mom's offer comes with strings attached. It always does. Brian ran a hand through his hair. It's just a wedding, Sam. One day, if it makes your parents happy. And what about the day after that? I asked. And the day after that? When we buy a house, will it be the one Mom thinks is appropriate? When we have children, will we raise them how she thinks is best? He blinked, genuinely confused. That's different. It's exactly the same. I picked up the engagement ring from the table. I love you, Brian. But I need to know who I'm marrying. The man who stands with me, or the man who stands with whoever has the most convincing argument, or the biggest checkbook. Brian's expression hardened. That's not fair. I'm trying to keep the peace. Peace at what price? I twisted the ring in my fingers. I spent my whole life keeping the peace, doing what was expected, following the path of least resistance. But I can't build a marriage on that. So, what do you want? He asked. I took a deep breath. I want our wedding. The one we planned. Small, personal, within our means. And if that means postponing until we can afford to do it without my parents' money, then that's what we do. Brian was quiet for a long moment. Your mom already invited her friends. Important contacts for your dad's business. They've paid deposits too. They can get their money back, I said. Or host a different party. They'll be humiliated. And I've been steamrolled, I countered. Again. Brian paced the small living room. I don't understand why this is suddenly such a big deal. You've never pushed back on your mom before. Which is exactly the problem, I said quietly. This isn't sudden, Brian. It's been building for 28 years. Every decision, every suggestion, every time I gave in to keep the peace. I can't start our marriage the same way. My phone buzzed with another text from Elizabeth. Your mother is demanding all your planning documents. Should I send them? I showed Brian the message. See? She's erasing me from my own wedding. He stared at the text, then at the contracts on the table. Something shifted in his expression, a dawning recognition. I messed up, he said finally. I saw how excited your mom was, and I didn't want to disappoint her. I didn't think about how it would make you feel. It wasn't quite the epiphany I'd hoped for, but it was a start. So what do we do now? He asked. I picked up my phone and the folder of contracts. We take back our wedding. The next morning, Brian and I sat in Elizabeth's tiny office, the original wedding plans spread across her desk. She'd kept everything, every email, every vendor contact, every design choice we'd made together. Your mother was persuasive, Elizabeth said diplomatically. But I've been doing this for 15 years. I know the difference between a mother's vision and a bride's. She showed us the calendar. Your original vendors are still available. The garden venue never actually released your date. The owner's daughter had her wedding reception there too and understood the situation. How much will we lose if we cancel Mom's arrangements? I asked. Elizabeth grimaced. The Grand Pavilion requires 90% payment for cancellations less than 7 days out. The premium florist, the string quartet, the champagne fountain, all non-refundable at this point. Brian whistled. That's got to be about $30,000, Elizabeth confirmed. My stomach dropped. We can't afford to pay that back. You don't have to, came a voice from the doorway. We turned to find my father standing there, looking uncomfortable in his business suit among Elizabeth's bohemian decor. Dad, what are you doing here? He entered the office, nodding at Elizabeth. Your sister told me where to find you. I tensed. If Mom sent you to talk me into. Your mother doesn't know I'm here. He sat heavily in the chair beside me, looking more tired than I'd seen him in years. I came to give you this. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check made out to me for $50,000. Dad, what? It's yours, he said simply. No strings attached. Your mother and I set this aside years ago for your wedding fund. She wanted to control how it was spent, but it was always meant for you. He smiled slightly. Half is from your grandmother's inheritance, actually. She'd have wanted you to have it your way. I stared at him, speechless. In my entire life, I'd never seen my father contradict my mother. Why now? I finally managed. He smiled sadly. Because last night was the first time I've seen you stand up for yourself in years. Maybe ever. He looked at the wedding plans on the desk. These are good plans. Thoughtful. Within your means. That matters more than impressing the Richardsons. He glanced out the window, his expression distant. I've spent 30 years following your mother's lead on everything. Watching you become just like me, he shook his head. I don't want that for you, Sam. I have too many regrets about the times I didn't speak up. This is my way of breaking that cycle. Mom will be furious, I whispered. Dad nodded. Probably. But I've spent 30 years making peace at any cost, and I'm not sure it's done any of us any favors. He stood and straightened his tie. I'll handle your mother. You two handle your wedding. After he left, Brian and I sat in stunned silence. Elizabeth cleared her throat. So, back to the original plan? Her expression shifted slightly. Though I should mention, there's one complication. Your original caterer took another booking when your mother canceled them. But she added quickly, seeing my face fall, I've already reached out to that farm-to-table place you also liked. They can accommodate us at the same price point, and honestly, their seasonal menu might be even better for a garden wedding. I looked at the check, then at Brian. What do you think? He took my hand. I think I want to marry you in that garden, with the wildflowers and the string lights, surrounded by people who actually know our names. Catered by whichever local restaurant can make it work. A weight lifted from my chest, one I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Let's do it then. Elizabeth grinned and began making calls. By the end of the day, our original wedding, with a few necessary adaptations, was back on track. Mom, predictably, didn't speak to me for 3 days. When she finally called, her voice was ice cold. Your father says you're proceeding with your alternative arrangements. Yes, I said simply, no longer feeling the need to justify myself. And you're using the money he gave you? Money we saved for your future. For my wedding, I corrected. Which is part of my future. She was quiet for a moment. You've embarrassed us, Samantha. People are asking questions. Tell them the truth, I suggested. That I wanted a smaller wedding. They'll think we can't afford better, she sniffed. Or they'll think I know my own mind, I replied. Either way, I don't really care. Another long silence. Then, unexpectedly, I suppose we'll need to coordinate our outfits with your new color scheme. It wasn't an apology. It would never be an apology. But it was acceptance of a sort. The colors are still the same, I said. Sage green and cream. A gem. I'll need to return the mother of the bride dress I bought then. A pause. I assume I'm still invited? Despite everything, I laughed. Yes, Mom. You're still invited. It's still your daughter's wedding. Well, she said, her voice softening just slightly. At least that hasn't changed. Our wedding day dawned with the kind of perfect weather you can't buy, even with an unlimited budget. The lakeside garden glowed in the morning light, wildflowers nodding in the gentle breeze. My dress, the simple, elegant one I'd chosen, not the upgraded version Mom had ordered, hung ready in the small bridal cottage. Kate helped me into it, her eyes suspiciously bright. You look like yourself, she said, adjusting the back. Only more. A knock at the door revealed Elizabeth, clipboard in hand. Everything's perfect. The caterers are set up, the musicians are in place, and she hesitated. Your mother is here. She's asking to see you before the ceremony. Kate and I exchanged glances. Is she alone? I asked. Elizabeth nodded. Your father's with the groomsmen. Send her in, I decided. Mom entered cautiously, dressed in a tasteful sage green suit, coordinated with our colors, but distinctly her own. She stopped when she saw me, her eyes widening. Oh, she said softly. I smoothed the simple silk of my dress. Is it what you expected? She approached slowly, reaching to adjust a strand of my hair. No, she admitted. It's better. For a moment, we stood in silence, decades of tension suspended between us. I brought you something, she said finally, opening her clutch. Your grandmother's hairpin. Something borrowed, something blue. She held out a delicate silver pin with a small sapphire. I remembered it from childhood, how she'd kept it in a special jewelry box, how she'd told me about wearing it at her own wedding. I began, confused. That I'd withhold it because you didn't do things my way? She smiled faintly. I considered it. I won't pretend I didn't. I turned to the mirror as she carefully slid the pin into my updo. Our eyes met in the reflection. You are the most stubborn person I've ever known, she said, except perhaps for myself. It was as close to understanding as we were likely to come. I reached back and squeezed her hand. Thank you for the pin. She nodded, composing herself. I'll see you out there. After she left, Kate whistled. Well, that was unexpected. I touched the sapphire pin, cool against my scalp. Maybe not completely. The ceremony was everything we'd planned. Intimate, personal, ours. 60 guests instead of 200. Fairy lights instead of crystal chandeliers. Personal vows instead of traditional ones. Brian waited for me under an arch of wildflowers, his face lighting up as I walked down the aisle on my father's arm. Behind him stood his brothers and closest friends. The small string trio played the song we'd chosen together. In the front row, Mom sat straight-backed and elegant, her expression unreadable. But when Dad placed my hand in Brian's, I saw her discreetly dab at her eyes. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves. Promises not just of love and fidelity, but of partnership and respect. Of standing together against whatever pressures might come. I promised to remember that we're a team, Brian said, his voice steady and sure. That your voice matters as much as mine. That our decisions should be ours, not anyone else's. I hadn't expected those words, hadn't asked for that specific acknowledgement. The fact that he offered it freely told me everything I needed to know. At the reception, under the market lights strung between trees, I danced with my father. Are you happy? He asked quietly. I looked around at the small gathering, at the simple, beautiful celebration we'd created, at Brian laughing with his college roommate, at Mom seated at her table. She was watching everything with a composed expression, occasionally glancing at her phone. Was she genuinely accepting this, or just biding her time until the next battle? I felt a flicker of doubt about how long this peace would last. Yes, I said, pushing the worry aside. This is exactly what I wanted. Dad nodded, following my gaze toward Mom. Then it's perfect. And don't worry too much about your mother. She'll adjust. She always does, eventually. As we moved across the dance floor, my father's cousin Susan approached, champagne in hand. What a beautiful wedding, Samantha, she said, her eyes warm. So refreshing to attend something that actually feels personal. Helen mentioned there were some last-minute changes to the plans, she added with a knowing smile. Good for you for sticking to your vision. The simple validation from someone in my parents' generation, someone who clearly understood the dynamics at play, sent a wave of relief through me. Later, as Brian and I prepared to leave, Mom approached with a small envelope. For your honeymoon, she said. No strings attached. I hesitated, then accepted it with a nod. Thank you. She straightened my necklace, a familiar gesture from childhood. You did well, Samantha. The wedding is lovely, in its own way. From Mom, it was practically a standing ovation. As we drove away, rice and flower petals still caught in our hair, Brian asked, was it worth it? All the drama, the confrontation. I thought about the weeks leading up to this day. The hard conversations, the boundaries drawn, the stance taken. I thought about how different I felt now, standing in my own truth, compared to the woman who'd always sought the path of least resistance. It wasn't just about the wedding, I said, watching the evening stars appear above us. It was about finding my voice, about choosing my life instead of having it chosen for me. Brian squeezed my hand. You have a pretty amazing voice. I'm glad you're using it. Behind us, the lights of our wedding glowed softly against the darkening sky, not the grand spectacle my mother had envisioned, but something truer, something ours. It was just the beginning. Was I right to stand up for myself and risk family relationships over just a wedding, or should I have compromised to keep the peace? What would you have done in my position?